welcome to Ep.1 of Creative Conversations, a Living Library of Resilience. My name is Rhiannon and Barry, and I'm so excited to be starting this project again. The Living Library of Resilience was originally an in-person event. The first time that I did it along with my project partners was in 2018, and that was done in person at the YWCA's Leadership Summit, which was held at Brock University. The way that it came about was it was sort of something that sat in the back of my mind for a long time. I had been a social worker for a few years, and I had this idea, but it never quite seemed like a good time to pitch it. I wanted to share people's stories of resilience, but having gone to school and receiving a diploma in community service work, I knew that having clients share their stories wasn't always the best policy. So it took me a while to figure out how to work this out. And then, everything sort of came together. I had pitched it to one other summit, and they sort of glossed over it, not really understanding what a living library or a human library was or how it could add value. And what ended up happening was, I saw an ad from the YWCA when they were looking for speakers, and I thought, this isn't really, I'm not a speaker, but I have something here. So I met with one of the organizers, and I also mentioned that I'm an artist, and she said, well, can you bring an art sort of angle into this? And I thought, yeah, well, let me think on it. I think I can do that. But I didn't really know how I was going to coordinate something this large and as an artist bring, an element of my art into it as well. So that was a challenge. But almost the next day, I saw Barry Smith, who's a photographer. I had met him. He had been one of the artists at a festival that I had helped to organize. So I knew him from that, and we had connected over Facebook, and he had put, hey, I'm looking for new projects, new partners. Does anybody have any good ideas? I thought, okay. And I reached out to him, and I kind of pitched the idea, maybe you could take the pictures of these people and we can turn them into the front of a book. So we could ask them, if your life were a novel, what would the title be? And then we'll put their title there. So that evolved even further. I was looking for people to be in the library, and I ended up recruiting a few volunteers who weren't brave enough to tell their stories or didn't feel like it was the right fit for them, but they still liked the idea of the project. So I had a writer, and she came, and I provided her with 5 basic questions, and she interviewed each one of the participants and wrote a synopsis. So we ended up having it as a whole book cover, so the back and the front. The back had the synopsis, the front had the title, along with Barry's photo that he took of them. And this was all put together by an intern, and then I blew them up to be privacy screens for the in-person event. So people could come during the lunch hour. Yeah, so there was I think we ended up with 10 people who were storytellers. And some of these lines, particular lines were backed up 6 people, and people kept popping in the room is there, can I talk with somebody yet? All in all, when we counted, we had close to 200, maybe more, 200 plus people anyway, came through there in the space of an hour. And I was advising the storytellers 5-10 minutes with each person, or, you judge it. but it was so positive. All like the surveys, not only did they fill them out, but they like wrote around the edges. And it was just really awesome. And people said, if you ever do this again, let me know. And I really want to be involved. And so the next year, as it happens, I left that position. And when I left, I said, to the executive director, I said, can I take this with me, this one project? And she said, sure. Yep, that's agreeable. So I wanted to do it again, but in my new position, it didn't really allow for that. And then I was already doing so many things as an artist, and just in life in general, that I didn't have the time to just like do it as like something I would do myself, or the funds to like pay for all the blow up all the screens, and then to pay Barry, and also like for my own time. And there wasn't enough time to get a grant, and there was nobody to, like, I wanted to partner with the YW on a grant, but it would have been too late by then, and you're really just supposed to apply how they wanted you to on their application. So it was kind of getting stressful, so I dropped it, and we left it on a shelf. And now we are pulling this idea off a shelf, and instead of in person, we will do interviews in podcast form. Okay, so a little bit about Barry. I have his bio here, so I'm just going to read a little bit of it for you. So, Barry Smith, born in Aberdeen, Scotland, and raised in Niagara. His unique pictures come to life like new paintings on canvas. He primarily prints on locally printed canvas to bring out the textures and depths of the photographs. Not one to manipulate the pictures, you will find that you see what he saw. Barry enjoys photography, architecture, people, and irony. He is always looking to capture the uncaptured, the soon-to-be lost forever, and the once-in-a-lifetime moment in time. With a knack for turning the ordinary into extraordinary, look for this kilt-wearing photographer in your area. So you can look Barry up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And he is a member of the Niagara Shores Artists, as well as a wedding photographer. And he's currently working on a project with fellow painters. Barry is a member of the St.Catharines Art Association and Niagara Arts Center. He was nominated for the St.Catharines Art Award in 2014 as an emerging artist. He has an art hanging all across the Niagara region, various homes and businesses. So he's shown publicly several times. What else can I tell you about Barry? So for this project as well, our podcast participants, so anyone who comes onto the podcast gets interviewed. If you're local, Barry will still be coming to take your picture, and we will be turning it into a book cover, especially for your episode. So he's going to continue to do that piece of the project. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Rhiannon and Barry, and I am a visual artist as well as a workshop and activity developer. I have over 10 years of experience developing and implementing art-based programming. Over 10 years painting and selling art. Currently pursuing a certification as in psychology counseling and as an art therapist. I am focused on using art as a catalyst for healing and change. And so 6.5 years of working in social services within the Niagara community. Some of the projects I'm currently offering and running are Creative Conversations Pen Pals project, which is something that was developed to combat the negative effects of isolation during COVID-19 and to help with social reentry. Now that you know a little bit about us as creatives and artists, I would like to invite you to listen to our interview of us interviewing each other. Do you feel like you had a mentor or support when you first started?
Um, yeah, definitely. I mean, from the photography, there was the one friend that I had, and we went on little walkabouts all the time. Um, and then since since then, it was because of the St. Catharines Art Association, um, and letting a photographer in there as a member was a relatively new thing for them as well. Um, and I surrounded myself with painters, and you being one of them. And I found that I learned more about art and selling art from painters than I do from any photographer. I
Yeah.
mean, I have close friends in the region that are photographers, but outside that, I try not to follow any one photographer any more than anybody else. I'd rather do my own thing and not try to recreate anybody else's.
Yep. It's hard
It
because there's so
is.
much out there, right? And the world
It
has
is.
completely changed with the internet.
Yeah. And at the same time, now that I've said that, for example, when I went to visit my aunt just in London, England, I had a list of things that I wanted to take pictures of, locations I wanted to get pictures, some for my own self, and some I just wanted the background so that I could figure out the time of day and um, what was going to. I mean, there's people everywhere, so something interesting was going to happen. But at the same time, I would look up their the hashtags on Instagram and see, well, what have other people done, so I know what not to do.
Yeah, that's
There's no
interesting.
point in putting this, the 60-second version of this exact same shot out there.
Yeah. So, do you think something like that, that sort of phenomenon that's happening, reduces the value of what you're trying to sell?
It can, because I mean, it seems like everybody has a camera
Yeah.
now, with the phones getting better and better and better. And they are. There's phones that are have incredible cameras on them, better than some SLRs, the cheaper ones. And um, it's just a lot of every it, guaranteed after a full moon. The next day you're looking on Facebook and there's 1,000, okay, well, 100 pictures of full moons, and you know which ones
Yep.
are going to be good or not, but there's 100 of them. Like the moon was going to be different on one side of the city than it was on this side. But anyway,
And so, like, how do you stay fresh then?
um, it's themes. Like Sandy Middleton, for example. Um, she will work on a project on her own time, and have a theme and set out to take pictures of certain things or certain conditions or what have you, and then at the end of that she's put it all together, and now she's made herself a show that she can call her own, and she hasn't really she hasn't taken that from anybody else.
Right.
Um, so that's I try to do that, um, having a full-time job, and it can be can make that difficult, but I try to do that. I have a whole bunch of little little mini projects on the go. Um, I I've enjoyed taking pictures of other people taking pictures for a good 10 years now, so I have a good collection of those. Some of them
Okay.
are quite funny.
So maybe there's something there for a future show.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I know for myself, like sometimes I feel so overwhelmed by watching what everybody else is doing because I have so many artists on my Instagram and Facebook now
Mm,
that I hit snooze for 30 days sometimes and just snooze every artist because
yeah.
unless they're in one of my programs or groups and I want to be supportive and like their stuff, but I try to not let it influence me in any way if I'm in the zone to create something for sale. And that's not all the time either because I'm busy as well. But if I'm gonna be like, you know what, I feel inspired, it's time to create. I try to turn off as many outside noises and voices as I can so that I can create like authentically. But it's definitely getting harder because there's like social agreements sort of with other artists that you're going to like their stuff and and social media plays such a large role in sales and if you're part of a group and you miss stuff then that could be detrimental too. So it's a balancing act to stay authentic, I feel, cuz everything's in your peripheral. Like I could try to not be influenced, but I mean, I'm seeing stuff all the time. So whether it's a color or a technique or, law of attraction, you're doing something and somebody else is doing the exact same thing, right? So it is difficult to stay fresh. Um,
But at the same time, I mean, blue is one thing, but if you're doing a painting of the exact blueberry with the that's hanging in the foreground from a tree, and there's a something in the background that's the same, then that's definitely an idea that you might have gotten from somewhere else, and unless it was your photograph.
well,
Um,
most of my stuff is like comes straight from my head. Like a
hmm,
lot of people use reference photos and things like that. And if I'm like creating like Rhiannon and Barry original art, it's either because I had a dream and I want to paint what the dream was, or I'm experiencing some sort of emotional upset and I want to express it on the canvas. And so I'll sit there for like 8 or 9 hours without a plan. And that's when my best stuff comes out.
no kidding.
Yeah, but, like, then when I'm, like, contracted, like, "Hey, will you, come do, like, a mindfulness art thing for my group of 10 people?" Like, how do you teach mindfulness to 10 different people? Like, it that in itself is a conundrum, but then you're trying to, um not be paint nighty and like, come up with a concept, that's an easy background, an easy foreground, maybe throw in one or two tips and tricks that can be done within 2.5 hours, right? So that's when I hate my stuff. Just hate it. And then when somebody's like, "Oh, I love that. Are you selling that?" I'll just be like, "Take it. Take it for free."
Just get it out of my face now. Yeah.
Yeah. Get it out of here. Soon I will be taking all of my canvases from paint classes and I'm going to do a Facebook Live where I'm going to take a knife or a pair of scissors and I'm gonna say keep or toss, and I'm gonna slice up all the ones that are toss, and anything somebody wants me to keep, it's on the porch, you better come get it or else it's getting thrown out. I gotta get rid of
Wow.
the bad juju. It's all
Wow,
just
that sounds exciting.
yeah, well, it's all sitting in there. So my sister said, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you just like tear them up if they're bugging you?"
But if you could enrich somebody else's life at the same time.
Yeah, if they want to come get them. Sometimes I put free ones up and like 4 or 5 people say I want it and then one person comes. So,
Hmm,
but and then my
I'd
friend
buy
as
that.
well
There's
said a lot of people have my paintings that I just gifted. There's a lot of people out there that have them along my journey. But I know that as well, like if I cut off all the canvas, I still have the frames and I can like I can get a roll of canvas and yeah, staple it on. So that's the plan.
Gotcha.
Yeah, out with the old.
In with the new dream.
Yeah.
Um, when when did you say? I know we've had this conversation before. When did you started painting?
I um like I painted a little bit in high school and people would sort of like kind of come by my desk and be like, "What?" Cuz it wasn't something that I was like even aware of myself. And I would give paintings away as well in high school, just thinking to myself, like, I could recreate this. It's not a big deal. Yeah, have it. Right. And I didn't see the talent in it really until I ended up with my son. He was almost 4 and I was single and I'd moved into my own apartment and we had a custody agreement and my son would go over to his father's house and I would sit there like almost like how people have, like, a ghost limb when they get a leg cut off?
Hmm,
I would just be like, "Oh, Mateo," and I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, he's not here." Like, it would be so strange because I was so used to him, like, always on my hip or whatever, right?
yeah.
And I was like, "I gotta do something." So I went and got some canvas and some paint, and I just started painting, and, people would come over, and they'd be like, "What the heck is this?" And I'd be like, "Don't look. I don't want anybody to see." And that went on for about 8 months, and then I had canvases all over my apartment turned towards the walls, and people would come over, and slowly I started trusting, like, just trustworthy people to take a gander, and I decided one day that anything that anybody turned around from that point was gonna stay turned around, and I was gonna be forced to, like, look at it and deal with it.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was like my heart spilling out all over this canvas, and it was feelings I didn't even know what they meant. I didn't know what I was doing, but, like, people would come over that had, like, art backgrounds, stuff like that, and they'd be like, "No, you have something." And I just had some really encouraging friends, and it was probably a little too early for me to do this, but I signed up for Artistry on the Lake. And I did the 2-day tent thing, and on the 2nd day, I think I told you this, I there's so much, like, tension and criticism and just, like, weird stuff that happened, like, just people walking by and saying things, like, I would step out and pretend it wasn't my booth so I could overhear what people really thought. Um I had one lady come by and she was really admiring the one that I had out on a canvas. I had used sparkles and I put them in the paint to make like a northern light um, scene over Lake Superior. And I was quite proud of it. And she was like, I love what you did here with the northern lights. And then she goes, my husband's a painter. And I said, oh, well, where is he? And he came walking over. And I said, what do you think? And he crossed his arms and he goes, I think I could teach you a thing or two. And it was just so, like, old man rude, and I was just like, "Ouch." Right? Because this is my first time, like, exposing myself, and I had like 3 or 4 friends on rotating shifts with me, so I was never alone because that's how vulnerable I felt. And then on the second day, I think I sold 4, which was
Wow.
impressive. They were all the elephant ones. People like elephants. And on the way home, I just sat very quiet. My buddy, Gabe, was in the car. He had supported me through most of it. And we were quiet the whole way home. He could tell I was a little upset. Um, and that night, I just sort of like, I bawled. I bawled when I got home because it was such a, like, it was so much emotions and stress and tension. And I vowed at that point that I wasn't going to do another fair for a while until I felt like really, really ready. And so it was just a lot of like painting and piling up of paintings, and then, that's just how it kind of started for me, like out of nowhere really. And it came from a place of like therapeutic sort of recreation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, I mean, so when was the first one that you painted that was reflecting a dream?
Um
Was that early on as well?
yeah, that was the first painting I ever sold actually.
Wow.
So it was like a twisted tree in the middle of a swamp with frogs around it. It was really random, and like water lilies popping out. And my brother's girlfriend at the time, she really wanted it. I was like, "You're lying." She's like, "No, I want to buy that." I'm like, "No, no, you're pulling my chain just to make me feel good." And she ended up buying it for $65, and it was like massive. It was, I don't know, it was like 60 by 40 or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just took like a giant canvas from, I don't know, it was like some store that sold canvas. So I can't even remember, but yeah, that was my first painting of a dream. And then, yeah, and she bought it, and I was like, oh, I'm on to something.
Just and I hate to put, a dollar figure on that. Um, what would, if you did that same painting today, but with all the things that you know
Yeah.
today, if you did
Yeah, it
that
would be a
same
different
painting, what
painting.
would you sell that for? Same size.
I would probably be up towards 600.
Wow, eh?
Yeah.
We've
I did sell one at an auction for 500 one time early on. Yeah. And that was
fantastic.
surprising. That was the same year I did Artistry on the Lake. It was right after that. I painted one freely to support somebody whose father had passed away and he wanted to continue in martial arts, something like that. And so he was collecting items, and I literally painted something very special for that purpose. It was his family, but depicted in birds on um, a branch. And yeah, it went for $500 in the auction. So that was a moment.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. But then, like, I didn't paint again for like a year after that. I don't think, after that Artistry on the Lake experience, I don't think I like took it seriously again after that for a long time.
Because of all that.
It
Yeah.
was hard. It was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. Like, you've done fairs, right? Do you find like it's difficult? Like, you're standing there, and maybe something will sell and maybe it won't. And someone says, "Oh, I like that," but then you don't have any sales. And then, like, it's just, it is difficult.
It is. I mean, you can, the amount of shows that you and I have done in Niagara. I did three different ones, outdoor shows in Toronto, downtown Toronto,
Ooh.
and um the person that put the event on really sold this to me, that it's like shooting fish in a barrel, and it turned out to be the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole time you're watching people go by and they're like, "Oh yeah, I really like that," and then on to the next one,
Yeah.
right? And
It's
I,
nice that people
as much as
compliment.
you enjoy hearing it,
Yeah.
um, but and then every once in a while, um, I would get I find out eventually that they're a photographer themselves after
Ooh.
asking me a whole bunch of questions
Ah.
for a particular one, and then finding out they're photographers themselves. So where do you get your prints done, and how much does that cost you, and things like that.
Yeah. That's why you need to form alliances and trustworthy connections, but even then, eh, yeah, not nice
No, and I
picking
don't.
your brain like that.
Yeah, I
Like your expertise is worth something. It's valuable, right? You don't want to just be giving it away. Unless it's an exchange of an idea, right? Knowledge exchange, that's different.
I think that's probably one of the worst things you could hear at a show, and somebody staring at one of your pieces and go, "Oh, I could do that,"
Yeah,
and walk away.
really.
I I
I
I
don't think
wouldn't.
I've ever had anybody say, "Oh, I could do that."
No way. Okay. I've heard it a couple times, and it's not something that happens at all the shows or anything.
Yeah. What
So,
about imposter syndrome? Do you ever struggle with that?
imposter?
Yeah, like, you know what imposter syndrome is?
Well,
Kind of.
let's explain this.
Okay, so
Take
it's
it away,
something that
Rhiannon.
like a ton of creatives, they deal with it. And it's this overwhelming feeling like you're going to be called out as a fraud by people in your peer group, so other artists.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it stops you from entering opportunities that might be really good for you. Um, and it comes down to like how you perceive your your social self, like how you want to be seen, how the ideal self would be, and like how you really feel at your career level. And if there's like large discrepancies between those things, it opens up the doors for this self-doubt and self-deprecating thoughts that sort of creep in and really screw you with your advancement in your career.
Yes, that has happened quite a few times.
Yeah, sounds familiar, right?
Yeah, both. I Yeah, because I get there's that fear of putting a photo online, um, and not knowing. I mean, you can figure out what what lens you use that day, and things like that. But at the time that you were taking the photograph, uh, and and again, I'm very, it's the right time, right place, and I'm more outdoors than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't do a ton of night photography and special effects and things like that, so I don't pay attention to the technical aspect of the camera as much as others do. And
Or maybe
so I
that could be a perception.
possibly, but I've been asked the question
Uh,
in person as well. Um,
okay.
you know, the, have you tried doing this, or did you do this for that photo? And like, no, I
Don't
had
you
my
feel
35
like,
millimeter and I went out
yeah,
for a walk.
yeah.
And
Well, don't you feel
it's
like sometimes you're behind? Like you feel like maybe other people know more or they're more advanced. I think people are looking at you thinking the same thing.
definitely. But at the same time, how come they're not? How come I've never heard of these people?
Well, that's true. Maybe because they're doing it the exact same way that they're taught in school. Just like any other program that you enter, they churn out replicas of
Right.
people, right? So I know, like before when I first started, people were like, "Well, where's the shadows?" And I'm like, "There are no shadows." Well, why aren't there shadows? Because it's my dream. So deal with it.
Checkmate.
But then,
Yeah.
over time, I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll throw a shadow in." Maybe I understand now as I evolve. Oh, okay, well this painting could benefit from that. And the more I tend to know, the more I start to realize I don't know, right? And then sometimes too, like I want to stay in my own style because it's evolving with me as a self-taught artist. So, do I really want to go take a bunch of classes and lose that? That makes me unique. Like the greats didn't do that, did they? I don't
I
know.
totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, because I've never taken a class. There's things things that I find, okay, I wish I knew how to do this better, and I'll just look it up on YouTube and find, okay, and then I'll practice that a few times. I'll write it down, practice that a few times, and now I know how to do that. Should I should I ever need to do it again? Like shooting the moon, for instance. I mean, you can't just you can, but you can get a much better photograph knowing how to set your camera up first, and where
Right.
and where the if there's white light noise around you and things like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff
Yeah.
to keep in mind,
I took
and
some photography. When I took journalism, I took photo journalism as a course.
mhm,
We were in the dark room for one semester. The next semester, everything got switched over to digital in the college. So I was on that cusp of the last class to be in the dark room.
nice.
It's very interesting transition to how we were even like laying out the newspaper and things like that with the desktop publishing and how we incorporated digital photography after that. But I remember learning about aperture speed and all this other stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, I could just jump on this mailbox and take a picture of this crowd and it's going to look great. Why do I need to know all this stuff? Right. So that's how I was just like, okay, well, you've taught me like the key stuff. I don't think I need to know more than that. And I was wrong. Right? Because there'd be an assignment, it'd be like, your assignment is to do this. And I'd be like, oh crap. Okay, I gotta go back and learn what they're talking about now. So there's a lot more to it. Um, but a lot of it is timing, a lot of it is lighting.
Lighting and depth of field. If you're taking pictures of anything that's in dark or moving, then that's just a whole nother layer altogether.
Yeah, that was one of the assignments.
So yeah,
Hmm. Movement, height, depth of field, lots of depth of field. I thought I was gonna like it a lot more than I did. I'm not a big photography person, I guess.
hmm. Being in journalism, you probably had to be ready for any situation.
Well, like that jumping on the mailbox, yeah, like I was covering the peace rallies when George Bush wanted to send people over to Iraq,
Hmm.
armies over to Iraq, and people were protesting in Canada. I think in the States too. I don't really know. But yeah, my first year of journalism was also 9/11. So that
Wow,
was an interesting way to start off. I remember we were told to stay home, watch the TV instead of come to class. Um, and then most of our assignments kind of went around that. A lot of them did. But yeah, so I was going to cover the peace rally, and I had brought a. Oh no, this was my second year because I had brought a first year as my photographer. I was like, grab a camera. I'm going to do the story. You do the pictures. There's people there from like UNICEF and like some really awesome. I was just like, oh, I need to talk to these people. I need to get quotes. And I'd be like, okay, make sure you take his picture. And then I'd go up to the guy, talk to him. I get, this guy was from Africa. He had all this experience and I'm getting these awesome quotes. And then I go look at the guy's camera and it's like really bad pictures, like shoulder in the way and stuff. I'm like, you couldn't have like maneuvered. And so as this is going on and on and on, I'm starting to get a little frustrated, right? Because I'm like, I know this is going to be a wicked story, but the photos aren't going to be good. And so once we got outside, I said, you need to take photos of the crowd. And so he's just like standing in the same spot, taking 6 photos. And I said, give me the camera. And I jumped on the mailbox and everybody was going down the street, but right in front of my shot was a stop sign and then a huge crowd of people. So it was this great shot from taken above the crowd with the stop sign in front of them and marching away down the street. So
Perfect, eh?
yeah, so that was like instinct, right? But it was also probably ego because of my story, right?
Well, you must have felt good about, okay, I know this.
Yeah, I got this. I can get this shot. Yeah. Yeah. So I know a little bit, but not a whole lot, just the basics.
That's why I try to keep it simple. Um, and I mean, the couple of photographers, older photographers that I have read about, um, they both say the same thing. Just keep it simple. And as soon as you try to overdo something, especially nowadays, you're probably just recreating something that
You're
somebody did
probably
that.
following a trend, right?
Yeah,
But your Volkswagen pictures are really, really cool. Especially the one with the teal Volkswagen. That one's, I'm sure that, how many copies of that have you sold?
that. Oh, I'm trying to think which. It's either that or the Williams Pole. That's the bestseller right now. Um,
Little
they're
rusty.
yeah, they're all over 10, maybe closer to 15, but of all sizes. And yeah, that one pulls a lot of heartstrings. That one, everyone loves their. That's the Beetle, first of all.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool.
The colors, yeah,
Maybe that should be our photo for the podcast.
that one,
The old rusty Beetle.
sink or swim.
Pretty resilient.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
It's a goodie.
I think there's a yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah. As far as colors
It's
and the
eye-catching.
rust and all that stuff.
All right,
There was another one that
settled.
they had like this thick rope wrapped around the bumper,
Oh,
and I always thought of that just in case it landed in water or something.
oh yeah. Dig that one out and send it on over.
Right. I know where that one is. Okay.
Either one's cool with me. I like both of, like I love the one that you did with the like just the colors are so balanced and everything. And the shot is really good. It's just the whole thing is really great. The what do they
Well,
call it?
what I can do is I can go back to the original and when I was editing the photos in the first couple of years, Instagram was square only. It was only square
Yeah.
photos. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do squares. And so I've gone back to a couple of the photos and redone them for my own, or I've shown maybe 10 people that. But that's something I can do with Junebug.
Yeah. Do you remember when you first put out like I don't know if you know this or not, but the reason I contacted you about the Living Library in the first place was because you had put out an ad saying, I'm looking for a partner to do a project with, or I'm looking for ideas for projects. And I was like, I have a project for you because I was just starting it. And I said, like, how would you feel about taking some photos for like book covers? And you're like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then I said, I remember you came and met me or something like that, where we were taking photos. We were already into it, maybe. And I was like explaining your work to somebody. And I said, and then the colors that he uses when he retouches them. And you turned around and you said, I don't retouch the colors. And I went, what? Those are the actual colors? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, really? Because I was sitting here thinking you were photoshopping like a lot of your work. Like, isn't
No,
that bizarre? Like, that's
especially like Junebug. Yes, I played with the contrast a little bit
yeah,
there, but that's it.
contrast. But I
And
thought it was like you were right into like layers and things like that. I thought you were right into Photoshop with them.
no, never have been.
Yeah.
And if anything, I've stripped myself down more since, um, because I would uh, in person in shows and things like that, I would use that as a selling feature. Listen, you see what I saw. That's
Yeah.
what you're looking at, what I saw that day when I took that picture.
Yeah. And then all those book covers that you took for the first Living Library, they weren't touched up either. They were just raw.
No,
Yeah.
just you know, just cleared, um, just micromanage them a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's if anything.
Yeah. And then like we blew them up and they looked great and everybody was complimenting like what the heck, who's the photographer? And then you actually gave two 8x10s to each of the participants as well as like a gift.
Yeah.
And they were all so happy with that. Like they were just blown away with that. It just meant so much to them, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. So not only was it something of, a good memory of what they participated in, but they were just like, these are amazing. Like every single one of them came up to me afterwards and was just super happy with it because it was them. They weren't retouched, like it was them. It was who they are as a person, which was, it's kind of rare that you don't find if you're going to be photographed, even like as a family portrait or something. A lot of times it's airbrushed and softened and stuff like that. So, yeah.
That means a lot to me. That's really nice. And, and here's the irony of that. The moment somebody finds out that I'm a photographer, they ask me to do headshots, or can you do just a quick family photo. I've been asked to do um, staff headshots for businesses and things like that, and I don't get I don't get second calls from them.
Yeah, because
Or
you're not, yeah.
I didn't make them look dreamy, I guess.
Yeah, dreamy for the website and the gram.
But I assumed that these people knew who I was, and and what it is I do.
I
I don't
think,
promote myself as a wedding photographer, but the
yeah,
people that know my art will hire me as a wedding photographer because they
yeah.
know what I can do and what is the do they want the real them on their
That's
wedding
like
day?
me with my classes, right? Like I really enjoy helping people become inspired to create like after my class if they leave wanting to create more art or pursuing art as a wellness sort of tool in their like toolbox, um that makes me happy, right? But teaching a social paint class is hard for me because it's so like filtered through so many different layers. And I was reading this study the other day too, and I found this interesting. I shared it with one of my sisters who also does painting classes. Like when you are on for like 2.5 hours as the instructor, there's a level of like tiredness. And we were talking like we both need to like lay down after a class because it's like you can't do anything else. So I was reading the story about how we all have like, or this study about how we all have our social masks and things like that, right? Like you're a certain way around your grandparents and you're a certain way around your friends and you're a certain way at work. And the more contrast is in between like what you want to be doing and what you are doing. And um, like if you're teaching children, you have to be really happy and exciting and keep their attention, right? Your glucose levels drop. And that's what
Oh,
makes you like literally when you're not being your authentic self. That's why I really hate workplace culture too, but that's a whole nother conversation. I think people should be able to be themselves. But but yeah, so it's like handy to have a glass of orange juice around when I'm doing a class, you
wow.
know, just because just the act of putting on that teacher mask
Mm,
or that come on everybody, we're going to have so much fun. And that's sort of how gentle painting was born because I was like, you know what? I see all these instructors, they can't all be this energetic and happy. You're telling me all these people that are teaching paint classes are naturally just like firecrackers? And so I was thinking about it one day after I did a class and I thought, why don't I just do it authentically? Like, hey guys, it's me. Let's start the class with a little bit of breathing or meditation. How are you feeling today on a 1 to 10? And that's how gentle painting really started because like I'm just like, I can't keep doing this. Like this doesn't make any sense. And I don't think anybody's really benefiting from it because I think you can tell when people aren't being authentic. And I think that they then have to put on a mask as well during the class to be a certain way because it's expected. And I
right.
just wanted everybody to be able to be themselves and be frustrated if you're frustrated and be tired if you're tired and be happy if you're happy and be joyful if you're joyful, if that's your, authentic feelings today. But and then it worked.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So even your students wouldn't be as tired
Yeah.
at, at the end of the.
And they're not as frustrated because I'm saying, this isn't paint by numbers. I don't want you to follow exactly what I'm doing. I want you to take your hand and touch the canvas and really feel like what is it? Close your eyes and feel that. What does that feel like? And I'll even do finger painting. We'll do get your hands in there. We'll make clouds with your fingers instead of a brush. Like what does that feel like that touching on the canvas and squishing between your fingers and there's something really organic there versus, okay, does everybody have your glass of wine? Okay, great. We're all going to get drunk and paint together. Yay. And then we're all going to go home and crash because we haven't actually been out in a long time and drank this much. But yeah,
That
that's what
sounds
it
like a
sort of
lot of
grew out
fun.
of.
It sounds like um a grown up kindergarten, just to feel the paints again. And
Yeah.
for someone to guide you down this path that you're not supposed to take because you're an adult now.
Yeah. And I always say make sure you have lots of rags handy. Yeah, that's a must. But no, you're exactly right. It's exactly what it is. You remember what it's like when you were a kid and you were just able to create art. And that's really when I say I'm painting my dreams, it's really what it is I'm just tapping into that piece. I'm not looking at an orchid and going, "Oh, I should do an orchid painting." Right? So that's the same sort of thing when you're finger painting. It's like it's bringing you right back to that human basic inclination to be creative.
Nice. And not have that. As adults, we seem to look too far ahead, and
Yeah.
we're we get anxious about consequences,
Anxious is a good
or
word.
or fear of a bad result and things like that.
Yeah, like
Whereas you're
not
a
being
kid,
I'm
you know,
not artistic. Like,
yeah,
oh, give me a break. You're artistic. Everybody's artistic. Even people who can't
everybody.
use their hands can paint with their toes. Elephants can paint with their trunks. Like everybody in my mind, the people who feel like they're not artistic, I think it's because somewhere along the line a teacher or a parent has said something. Like that's not how we do it, or well,
Right.
that you're not coloring in the lines or something like that. Um
That whole left-handed syndrome
yeah,
from the 50s over again.
that's not even true, right? The whole like creative mind, numbers mind, or whatever, analytical mind. That's not even true. Like they found like the brain, like the studies on brain like imaging. It's not true.
You right. You have an art side, an artistic side, period.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes like I find like the people who get frustrated the most in those social paint classes are accountants. I've had a couple where they're like huffing and puffing, and I literally have to put my hands on their shoulders and be like, just breathe. I will get you through this. I promise you, you will be happy at the end of this, and, then you have to pay a little bit of special attention to them. Or other times people be like, I thought this was going to be so much easier. And it's like, well, I'm teaching you a technique. And I'm encouraging you to be free. And that's what's frustrating you is that you're not used to being like free. You want me to tell you now mix blue with green and 3/4 white and then apply it to this area and wait for it to dry. And then I want you to get the purple and mix it with this green. And then we're going to do this circle over here. Like, you know, that's why they're getting frustrated because they're not used to the freedom of exercising that part of their brain or personality or whatever.
I have an admission.
You're
So because I've painted 3 times
Oh yeah.
now with the guidance of my friend, Robin Nesbitt.
Yes. I think I
Um,
saw the painting that you guys did together actually.
what? Well, we were at her house for the one of the art shows, and so nobody was telling me or necessarily looking over my shoulder or anything. They gave me the canvas and it was go, and it was Black-Eyed Susans in the garden. I couldn't have picked a more difficult thing outside. Um, and I had to. She had this little cheater thing that had graphs in it because
Yeah.
I had to know where each flower was, and I had to pencil each one into a grid onto my canvas, and
So
then
there was a
try to
lot
figure
more to
out
it than you had bargained for.
the petals and all that.
And
It
then you
was
had to cover
hard
all
for
that
me to
lovely
let go.
drawing up with paint.
Say that again.
And then you had to cover all that lovely effort that you put into the drawing with paint.
I mean, the painting looks great from far away.
It did look good. I saw it. I was like, okay, and you're too hard on yourself. If you've only done three and that's one of the three, you're a little hard on yourself.
That was the very first one, which I thought was too difficult in the first place. So I've done smaller ones since. One was a barn, which I thought architecture. This is a little more up my alley. Uh, what do you, I can't remember the word for that, but so it was, a barn, and she was giving us, a black and white photograph, but we had to paint it in color,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So there was
Yeah. So you can get the shadows and
learning about the warms and the cools and
yeah.
things like that, which, I still have work to do there. Um, but it seemed like it was a little more in my wheelhouse. That one, I think the third one I did was two apples and a pear.
Yeah. See, I was going to say, why didn't she start you with an apple?
Yeah,
That's
that was
usually the go-to.
so those last two was actually classes that she was
Oh, okay. Yeah.
putting
So you
on.
jumped in on a class.
I thought I'd jump in, but I was there physically. This was before
Yeah.
the lockdown.
Well,
It was a
she's
very
advanced. She is a legit college art teacher, no?
yeah,
At Niagara College. So don't be too hard on yourself.
even yes,
She's teaching
I
you
would
very
agree as well.
technical tools that are good to have in your little toolkit for, and this is a thing that happens with artists, or maybe it doesn't with all, but something I've noticed along the way with myself and the people who are around me is that you might start out with a few tools doing a certain style that you think you want to get really, really good at, and that's going to be your your livelihood. Because that's the other thing too, that an art mentor will tell you: pick like a style or a type, and that's, and stick with it, because that will be your signature, right? Your signature
What if it
piece.
was the
Like,
wrong one?
well, see, what I've noticed is people start somewhere and they almost always end up somewhere else,
Hmm.
right? But then those tools that they used for that first piece either taught them what not to do, or was only the beginning of like a 15 lesson tool plan, right? So, like, people have started out doing cats and dogs and now they're doing like beautiful landscapes, so it, and the 10,000 hour rule, right? Like, about that.
As a photographer, no.
No, no. It's not as anything. It's in life in general. Like, it's kind of cool. It's like anything that you put 10,000 hours into, you become an expert at.
Oh,
So how many hours do you think you've put into photography?
at least that.
10,000?
Sure. No, I'd have to do the math.
Yeah, yeah. I know I never stopped to do my math, but I don't think I'm an expert yet, but that could be
How many
argued
hours are
by
in
the 5 paintings I sold in the last 2 months,
it? Oh wow.
right? Like, what the hell? What just happened? And then I won't sell anything for like 7 months.
No,
That's how it goes, but
I think I sold as much last year as I did the 2 years before that during a pandemic in which I had, you know, zero shows. Well, not zero, but they were inside buildings that nobody could get to.
right, and that's a little strange. But I've got a couple, or I've got one, no, I got a couple on Queen Street right now at the hub, hanging
Like,
out.
yeah, I like that place.
Yeah, yeah. They're doing a good job actually of organizing. All their paperwork's really legit. Like, I signed up and then the next thing I knew I had like a 3-page form sent to me. I'm like, "Oh, what's this?" And they're like, "List all your paintings." And I'm like, "Oh, okay.
Nice.
Gonna have to take some time to fill this one out and read it," but really legit. And then they did a spring show. I submitted 2. They wanted another 2 to add because everybody else had 4. So I added another 2 that I had hanging around, and before they even hung them, one sold.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, "That's pretty cool," and it was like, I think it was a $350 painting.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was sweet.
great.
Yeah, um, and then I was doing that Creative Conversations Pen Pals project. I sold a couple little pieces that I did along the way of that and some prints. So, yeah,
Beautiful.
like surprising during COVID, but good surprising.
At the same time, maybe that's what people need.
A
I
reset.
mean, at the beginning of that, well, probably would have been about a year ago, I sold canvas of those beautiful blossoms up at Brock, with the that statue in the background, and a lady across the street. I have a few Brock employees on my street. They're all working at home. And she wanted to buy that to put in her newly renovated little office space,
Sweet. Yeah.
just to feel
We
like she
should
was
have been
at work
on
a little
that
bit.
for Zoom backgrounds early on. We should have been all over that as artists,
That's true, eh?
right?
Oh, is it too late?
Thank you for listening. We wanted to give you a little bit more of a background on both Barry and myself, and I think we did that today. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you do want to be part of the Living Library of Resilience, please do contact me via my email or by Rhiannon and Barry at gmail.com. Have a wonderful day from both of us.